Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 13. And today we're talking about this weekend's big action between the undefeated 140-pound champions. Let's go!
Don't brag about taking my side piece! Don't brag about taking my side piece, though!
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy, just...
Josh Taylor versus Jose Carlos Ramirez. This Saturday, Battle of the Unbeatens for the entirety of the 140-pound crown. Every belt is on the line. Everything is on the line. This is Josh Taylor's second defense since beating Prograis. This is a big fight, ladies and gentlemen. This is a really big fight. Let's talk Josh Taylor really quickly. Josh Taylor is a southpaw, undefeated, 17-0 with 13 knockouts. He's known for beating Prograis in the 140-pound World Super Series thing that they had on the zone. He's, of course, has win against Baranchuk, Ryan Martin, and Postal, in addition to, of course, his previous fight against Hong Song. I don't think I said that correctly, but it was a first-round knockout. Anyway, so Josh Taylor is a very good boxer. I thought he was a little bit overrated going into the Prograis fight, and I really thought Prograis would win him, but Josh Taylor really, really put it on him. I thought he won quite convincingly. I know one of the judges had it a draw. I thought it was a competitive but wide fight. I think I had it 116-112. I think that was around what I had it. But it was close, but again, competitive, but clear for Josh Taylor. And Josh Taylor has a very good hand speed. And of course, being a southpaw helps. You all should go back and watch the Prograis fight, because given the way that Prograis has been fighting since and prior to that fight, you would see the kind of caliber of fighter that Prograis is. And for Josh Taylor to beat him in a convincing manner was a very, very, very good showing. And I think Josh Taylor is easily on the pound-for-pound cusp in that top 10. I think if he beats Jose Ramirez Saturday, he will absolutely be a top 10 fighter. Maybe even top 5, but it's off the top of my head. Now, he is primed for moving up. Josh Taylor is lanky, 5'10". That is a little bit of height for a 140-pounder. So we can definitely see his upside if he wins against Carlos Ramirez after having cleaned down 140. He can easily go up to 147, and over there potentially, it'll be interesting to see him against Crawford, because Crawford was the previous undisputed 140-pound title holder. So that would be something that would have a nice storyline go with undefeated guys. But again, this is getting a little bit too far ahead of myself. We're just talking about Josh Taylor in general. Now, again, he moves really well and has pretty damn good speed and enough pop to keep you honest. He's knocking out people at 75% rate. He doesn't particularly have really what it doesn't look like. It doesn't have particularly amazing power, but he has very good power, and that's all you need. Remember, you don't need to have this one punch knockout power like Gervonta Davis or Kovalev or Golovkin. You can be fine with having very, very good power. I think Canelo is in that range where he has very, very good power, but not necessarily that lights out power. I think his power is very comparable to Prograis, probably a little less, but I think Josh Taylor is a very, very good fighter. I can't believe I underrated him 2 years ago going into that Prograis fight. Now he's fighting against Jose Carlos Ramirez, who is similar height, 5'10", undefeated as well, 26-0 with 17 knockouts. So also respectable power. He recently beat Maurice Hooker and Victor Postol back-to-back. Now, he struggled against Victor Postol. He did. It was a majority decision. The fight was very close. I think I had him actually winning, but I thought a draw was possible in that fight. Now, this isn't really a knock. Again, I say this often, but this is just because a fighter has a close fight with somebody does not mean the fighter is not that good. It can sometimes be that the opponent he is facing is at the proper caliber or the world championship caliber level. And I think Victor Postol is at that level. He's a master fencer with a really, really, really good jab, and he's quite sizable at 5'11". His only losses have been to Terrence Crawford in a fight where he didn't get particularly embarrassed. Yes, he was more or less shut out, but he seemed like he was at least kind of in it at all points. Wasn't a complete walkthrough. And of course, he lost to Josh Taylor as I mentioned. So having a close but competitive fight with Viktor Postol is not a knock on Josh Taylor. It just shows you Viktor Postol is still very good. But it does probably show you that Josh Taylor against similar opposition has done a little bit better. And going into this fight, we're going to, I think, see something similar. Now, Jose Ramirez is an orthodox fighter, but he's not quite as fast as Josh Taylor. Same size, but not quite as fast. So I expect Josh Taylor to kind of to pull away as the rounds certainly go on. I think Jose Ramirez, as long as he's early on, can kind of match the speed early on. You're a little bit faster in the beginning of the fight. I think those first 6 rounds are going to be quite close, and then I expect Josh Taylor to slowly pull away with this fight. Again, no knock on Jose Ramirez. I just think Josh Taylor is a very, very, very good fighter. I'm not going to make the mistake of underrating him. And I'm not underrating Jose Ramirez. I think it's, of course, very possible that he wins. I just don't see the angle. Jose Ramirez is not a one-punch knockout artist, so he's going to have to try and win kind of like a war of attrition with Taylor, and I think Taylor being the better boxer and the faster boxer, along with being the southpaw, is going to prove advantageous to him. I don't think Jose Ramirez is going to stop him. Of course, anything is possible in boxing. If you get through Josh Taylor's body and get there a lot, maybe he'll find the success to slow him down enough and then stop him in those later rounds. Now let's talk. Again, he did say he did beat Maurice Hooker when Maurice Hooker was undefeated. Now Maurice Hooker had at that point numerous draws and has since lost his last 2 fights. We talked about him. His last 2 fights, he obviously lost to Carlos Ramirez, but he recently lost to Virgil Ortiz, which we kind of predicted. Maurice Hooker is good, but not quite at that level. He's kind of like your B- type of a fighter. He can compete for a championship title, but he'll probably not win one. He's also beat Jose Zepeda, and took Antonio Rosa's. So his resume is not paltry. He has a legit set of wins, especially his last 5 fights. So Jose Carlos Ramirez is seasoned and is ready for this fight. He's at the right age of 28 compared to Josh Taylor's 30 years old. So they're both in the prime of their career. And I expect to see a good, competitive, but ultimately a fight Josh Taylor will win going away. I think like I said, after 6 rounds, I expect it to be kind of like a split fight in the early goings, and then Josh Taylor take the majority of those rounds in the latter half of the fight. Now let's talk about some of the betting sides, because me, generally speaking, I will bet on a given weekend. So let's see what we're going to do here. DraftKings has it at plus 188 for Ramirez, minus 265 for Josh Taylor. Again, that means if you bet 100, you win 188 if you bet on Ramirez, and you have to bet 265 to win 100 if you bet on Taylor. So Taylor is the favorite. Again, so you pretty much have to bet 2.5 times to 1 for that. In terms of total rounds, the over 10.5 is a minus 345, and the under 10.5 is a 240. So kind of thinking what I'm thinking as well. Neither of the guy has that kind of power necessarily, where you would think that he would put the other out quickly. And Carlos Ramirez has fought against Maurice Hooker and Zepeda and hasn't really, hasn't been stopped, hasn't been really hurt like that. So it's unlikely he gets stopped by Taylor here, which is why, the 10.5 is so unfavorable. You have to bet $345 to win $100. Now, the bet I like here, what I'm probably going to do, is take Josh Taylor by decision at minus 121, which means you got to bet $121 to win 100. Now, guys, please, you're grown people. You make your own decision. None of this is financial advice. Please, you make your own bets. You're all grown men, women. You have to be over 18 to bet. So you made your own decision. You thought about this. You're like, hey, I'm going to make this own decision. I'm just some guy who's rambling online. And I like the under 10.5 at plus 240 in case anyone gets the stoppage. This will also hedge the Ramirez by KO, or if Josh Taylor gets him out with body shots or something like that early. Now, of course, guys, the way you lose here is if Josh Taylor stops him after 10.5 rounds, or if Jose Ramirez wins after 10.5 rounds in any way, either by stoppage or by decision. So that's how I like this weekend to play out for me in this fight. Again, I expect, like I said, the first half of the fight to be quite close, and for Josh Taylor to pull away the second half of the fight, ultimately winning a close but competitive decision. Now, you guys have heard about the new division, right? That little sweet spot between the giant heavyweights and the cruiserweights, something between 200 and 220 pounds. Well, the WBC wants you to know that they, in fact, heard your cries and pleas for yet another division and have created the Bridgerweight or Briggerweight, or they should have just called the Brigadier weight, but the Bridgerweight it is. Now, I'm actually, for all the fun that everyone makes fun of boxing about having the millions of weight classes, I actually think this is a weight class which can actually belong. There's very clearly a big difference between the guys at 200 to 220 pounds and the guys that are significantly bigger than them. And I think it's been apparent for quite a while. Some heavyweights are just undersized in this day and age. When these guys are walking around 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", 250, 260 pounds, the guys who are walking around 6'2", 6'3", 215, 210 are clearly not the same size guys. What happens here is, though, as humans get bigger, their punch is disproportionately stronger. Like a 250-pound guy can't necessarily handle a punch from a 215-pound guy. Like, they're all strong. Once you get to around 200 pounds, anyone can knock anyone out. So what winds up happening is that they group everyone in the giant heavyweight division at over 200. But I actually think keeping the guys, having a division between 200 and 220 is actually a pretty good idea. So one of the fights that actually interests me this weekend is the Dimitri Kuriashov versus Evgeny Romanov fight. Now, if you guys remember Dimitri Kudryashov, he has insane power in his hands. He's 24-3 with 23 KOs. The problem is he knocks out at the same rate that he gets knocked out, which is about 100%. He's lost every single fight by knockout. He's called the Russian Hammer. He's now 35 years old, 6'2". So he's one of those guys who was a cruiserweight but could get a little bit bigger. In this case, the Bridgerweight class is actually quite perfect for him, as he's only 6'2.5". Now, he fought against Dorticos in the cruiserweight tournament, the one that Usyk wound up winning, and that was a hell of a fight while it lasted. You were thinking who's going to get knocked out who, and eventually, obviously, Kuryashov wound up getting knocked out. And he then later again got knocked out against Makabu at cruiserweight as well. Well, here he is fighting against Evgeny Romanov. Now, why is Romanov? He's an undefeated fighter, 15-0 with 11 KOs. Was his claim to fame? He's an old guy. He's kind of done nothing in the sport. He's fought at heavyweight most of his career. He's clearly undersized at only 6 foot tall. So what is it with him? He kind of fluctuates a lot in weight, but like, what is he? He's like between 215, goes all the way up to 230 sometimes. But his claim to fame is specifically that he knocked out Deontay Wilder in the amateurs. Yeah, absolutely. So he kind of had a little bit of like fame in Russia because of that. He's the guy who knocked out Deontay Wilder, who was part of the triumvirate champions, that we had from 2015 to 2020. People we're going to remember, I'm going to remember this era of heavyweights, the three-headed chimera that sat around for 5 years until Wilder finally lost to Fury. Now, so Romanov, Evgeny, always wound up having kind of I always wanted to know, well, how good is he? I mean, it was obvious if you watch his fights that he's a decent fighter, but he's not a championship-level fighter. He's also obviously too small for heavyweight. A 6 foot, this is Mike Tyson, a 6 foot guy is not going to be competitive with 6'5" heavyweights who are 50, 60 pounds heavier than him. But here comes the Bridgerweight. This weight class is just right. Although I think Evgeny can easily be a cruiser, but let's say his body is one of those wider bodies. He just can't come down. This is perfect. And against Kudryashov, we're going to have an interesting opening kind of salvo. At least for me. I know fights have occurred in this weight class already, but This is the first one I'm going to watch at this weight class for the WBC. Now, again, the interesting thing about Kudryashov is that someone's getting knocked out, either him or you. And Romanov has decent pop. He's got a 73% KO ratio. So, again, like I said, I don't have really a prediction here except that somebody gets knocked out, as has been the case with every single Dimitri Kudryashov fight. So, I'm going with somebody by knockout. And I mentioned Jose Zepeda earlier in the fight, his loss to Carlos Ramirez. He's fighting on the undercard as well, because he wants to get back in it. He wants to come right back at the winner of the two guys. He's fighting Henry Lundy. Now, Henry he's an aged lightweight, actually. And it almost seems like he's being set up to lose. He wound up getting stopped by Crawford 5-6 years ago, lost to Mauricio Herrera, and most recently got defeated by Ari Sparrow and Zaur Abdullayev. Now, he's fought 8-round fights. He's clearly being set up for Zepeda to get his confidence back. He wants to. Zepeda's coming off. You have to understand. Zepeda's coming off probably the fight of the year in 2020 against Baranchuk. That fight had like 6 or 7 knockdowns. He was down twice in round 1, once in round 2, and once in round 5. He was himself, Zepeda, was knocked down 4 times before he wound up stopping Baranchuk, who was down in the second, third, fourth, and fifth round. So we had 8 knockdowns in that fight. If you guys haven't seen this, one of the most insane fights I've ever seen in my life. Just insane. And Baranchuk looks like a little like diesel in there. So I actually expected him to kill Zepeda, but he didn't. So anyway, Zepeda comes off that insane fight, and he's fighting Henry Lundy. And it's obvious it's going to be a 10-round fight. It's obvious that I think Henry Lundy's being brought in as a face for Zepeda. With Lundy's KO percentage at 35%. He doesn't have much pop. And so he's probably in no danger of stopping Zepeda. So Zepeda's handlers know, like, look, we're going to get him one more shot up here. We're going to try and bring him into the championship level one last time, see if he can do it. Because remember, he lost to Jose Carlos Ramirez and Terry Flanagan years ago, 7 years ago or so. So I think this is his last run at the championship level, and they're taking the easier but understandable path over here. And I fully expect Zepeda to win. Now, if you wanted to bet on this fight, what do we got out here? So Jose Zepeda is a really wide favorite, and minus 5,000 means you got to bet $5,000 to win 100. Henry Lundy is a plus 1,000, means betting 100 wins you 1,000. Now, I really don't think that Lundy has much of a chance, unless maybe Zepeda's chin broke in that fight against Baranchuk. It's possible. It's absolutely possible. The over-under is at 6.5. So it's minus 115 both ways. That's not bad. I think your best bet is to kind of coin flip which way it's going. Does Henry Lundy have the legs to make it to 7 rounds in the 7th round at 1 minute and 30 seconds? If he does, then a $115 bet will net you $100. That's not bad. But if he doesn't, that's the case. So I may sit this one out. I don't think this is a fight I want to bet on. I believe Henry Lundy was brought in for a reason. And, fighting 8-round fights that are, going from an 8-round fight to a guy who fought for a championship is I think, a bit of a jump for an aging fighter here. Now let's talk a little bit of boxing news. Jake Paul is no longer with Triller. He no longer will be fighting there. Apparently he has a deal in place with Showtime. Now that's bringing a little bit more legitimacy to it. But I will say, like what I said before, maybe Showtime is not the right place for him. Part of what makes the Jake Paul events interesting is the fact that it is such a shit show in a way. You do have these artists performing. You're like a concert/fight with Snoop Dogg and everyone else getting high on screen. You will not have that at Showtime. Showtime is going to treat it as a proper boxing card, which means it's going to be tame in comparison. Now, will those fans who watch Jake Paul and enjoy the Triller cards, will they be bored watching a Showtime event? Maybe. Like I said, I sat next to some casual, not even casual boxing fans. I sat next to non-boxing fans, and they kind of like Triller. They saw the Doja Cat, they saw the Justin Bieber, they saw the Sweetie and stuff like that. But Here they are at Showtime. They're going to have Suits. They're going to have Al Bernstein. They don't even have Paulie Malignaggi anymore. That's a whole side conversation, but it's messed up what happened with Malignaggi. Showtime kind of did him dirty. He spoke his mind and they fired him. For what? And for him saying the obvious truth? That's ridiculous. So, so you lost a little bit of color on that team. I don't get me wrong, I like Showtime. I like Showtime a lot. But think about the audience that we're kind of attracting with Jake Paul. Like I said, they're the regular fans who don't really care about boxing. To them, like, oh, why isn't this guy knocked out yet? The second a fight goes more than a few rounds, they're bored. That's the kind of fighters, the kind of viewers we're attracting. So while going to Showtime raises Jake Paul's legitimacy as a boxer, it does, I think, probably not much for him. Of course, the opponent will matter here, but it does not do much for him as an entertainer or growing his celebrity. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Showtime puts on a hell of a card, and maybe everything's great, and maybe, who knows, maybe Jake Paul's so serious about this whole boxing thing that he makes a run at the championship. That would be kind of crazy. I actually think if he proves people wrong and actually somehow makes it to a championship level fight and beats a legit boxer 2 on the way up, I think he would, regardless of whether he wins the championship, will have already proven all his haters wrong. Because at the start, most people wouldn't peg him to win any fight, let alone increasing level of competition, knocking out an MMA guy in his previous fight. It's quite insane. If you remember all the pre-fight things, at the end of the day, I said, I'm like, just like, forget about what Ben Askren looks like with his hands. He's still a fighter. Shit, was I wrong? Jake Paul KO'd him quite easily. He wasn't even competitive. Now let's move on to some more rumors. Eddie Hearn wants Joshua Bowatsi to fight Dimitri Bivall. Now I think Eddie Hearn sees in Bivall what I saw in his last fight. And that's that Bivall didn't look particularly good. And he is, in fact, an undersized light heavy. And Joshua Bowatsi, not only is he a good up-and-coming prospect, but he's big. And I think the writing's on the wall for Bivall. I think the longer he stays at light heavyweight, the more likely it is he is to lose. Eventually, kind of like with Lomachenko, your size matters. This is an old adage in boxing. A good big guy is going to beat a good small guy almost every time. And Dimitri Bivall is a good small guy, but he is a small guy. And these light heavies, man, they stretch from being kind of like Pascal, which is a reasonable size light heavy, all the way up to Beterbiev, which can easily be a cruiserweight, or Kovalev, who recently mentioned that he wants to try a cruiserweight. Now, I don't think Kovalev, is more of a side. I don't think Kovalev has a shot at cruiserweight. I think his chin is spent. I think his power has already looked like it's been sapping even at light heavyweight. And his speed is kind of gone as well. He's been looking kind of frail recently. I know there's alcohol and whatever involved, but that's not the point. The point is we have to judge a fighter by what he is, regardless of why he's that way, but what he is now at 38 years old. Kovalev at 38 is not the Kovalev at 32. Yes, the Kovalev at 32 was a pound-for-pound fighter, pound-for-pound number 1 maybe at the time. Beat Andre Ward that first fight. I don't care. Go rewatch the fight. There's no way Andre Ward won that first fight. But that's not the Kovalev now. And him wanting to go up to cruiserweight. But that just goes to show you how big some of these light heavies are. And Bivall, he's a guy who should easily be at 168. Easily. Should go clean out that division. Fight Canelo. I don't know. I agree with Eddie Hearn. If you can get Bowatsi in there, I think he takes it against Bivall. I absolutely do. Well, again, have fun watching these fights, And I guess I'm going to speak to you guys on Sunday or Monday. It's over.
I'm gonna go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man, good boy, just